The Instructor podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast Green Room Edition. This is a show where we cover all the latest news and hot topics from within the driving instructor industry. As always, I am your mediocre host, Terry Cook. I'm delighted to be here, and even more delighted that you have chosen to listen, but you'll be delighted that it's not just me. As always, I've got some of my I've got some of my premium members in the chat, potentially ready to share some comments and share some thoughts. I'm also joined by the co-founder of the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective, Chris Bensted. How are we doing, Chris?
I'm really good. I would never call you mediocre, not after last time when you threw your toys out the pram.
I am regularly mediocre. I think it's my go-to. If I can hit, the thing is, if I'm doing mediocre, I'm doing better than half the world, so I'm all right. But yes, we have got a key topic today because I did get a little bit frustrated at the start of the month. We're seeing a lot of negativity around the industry, and I said, let's talk about what we love about the industry. Now, after the day I've had, might not be the best day to it, but either way, we are going to be talking about what we love about our industry. But before we do that, there is a little bit of news. It's not been a massive month for news in the industry, but there's a bit of news. So the first thing I want to mention is Road Safety Week, because as we are recording, last week was Road Safety Week, the campaign by Brake, the road safety charity, and the theme was all about let's talk about speed. So I'm going to ask you kind of a double-barreled question here, I think, Chris. So from my perspective, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think I saw more driving instructors interacting with it this year. So I'm just wondering what you saw and what your kind of overall thoughts on the campaign were.
I had a bit of a week away from social media, except for posting myself. So I didn't see quite so much going on. But I know I'd spoken to a few people who were aware of it and remembered it was happening. I think it's the biggest thing is, it's November and we're kind of, in amongst everything going on. It's very easy to know it was coming and then suddenly go, oh, it was last week, which I have done a couple of times. So I think there are a lot of people aware of it. So hopefully there were things going on, but I'm probably not the best one to ask because I was sort of, just about getting by and keeping up with things and managing to post some bits myself.
What were your thoughts on the campaign then? Because I found that it felt very conversational. That was the whole thing. Let's talk about speed. It wasn't, we're going to shout at you until you ignore us or do what we say. It was, let's have this conversation.
That was the approach that I took with a couple of things, which was not saying don't speed. You're evil if you're a speeder, or that speeding kills, because people get that. They've heard it, time and time again. I tried to engage in more of a conversational approach and kind of say, tell me when you do speed, when do you feel it's justified? And I think that was some of the message behind the campaign. There were some really good posters that had, quotations of things that people have allegedly said. I don't know if they were real people or not. Good marketing stuff, probably. But that was quite good of, kind of justifying it. The things that we hear a lot of, well, it's not really legal because you're allowed to go 10% over. All of those different kind of comments. So that was the approach that I took. So it's definitely the message I got. The best feedback I had was that I sent this is something I'm going to carry on for next year. I sent the preschool pack that Brake do. Their resources are really good once you find them. And I sent the preschool pack to my other half's preschool, and they went, lovely, that's this week planned. And literally were sharing stuff straight from it with parents, and they had some really good engagement. So I think they probably got the topic right, the approach right, and hopefully that resonated with the engagement that was out there.
I like the stuff you were putting out, to be fair, and there was one in particular that reminded me of a post I did that I can't find, and I think it may have been because I wrote it for Good Motoring magazine, but it was talking about how do you choose which laws to break. How do you choose? I think you were talking about how do you choose over speed. It wasn't is speeding wrong. It was, how do we choose what laws are going to break? So I agree. I think there was some really good stuff there. I don't want to spend too much time on this because there's other stuff to cover, and we've done episodes on road safety, and we will do episodes on road safety before, but a few things I just want to touch on. It was interesting what you said there as well about the resources when you find them. And that's part of the problem, because one of the approaches I took with this in the guise of the Instructor podcast, not my driving school, the Instructor podcast, was I'm trying to inform instructors. I'm trying to let them know what's going on this day, and then they can take from that what they want. So I wasn't necessarily trying to have the conversation with instructors. It's like, this is what's available. This is what we're talking about. Go utilize it as best you see fit. But there is that barrier in there of information that we can get, but there's lots of it. Where do we find it? How do we apply it? There's that barrier there for us, isn't there?
Yes. And sometimes there's too much, and sometimes there's not enough readily available to us. And I think finding that sweet spot is a real challenge. If anyone has the answer, please let me know.
Stay tuned. Next year, there will be the answer. I'm not going to go into too much now, but there is a 3-phase plan for next year. And I'm not going into too much because there's a chance I may have a nervous breakdown before then. So I'm not committing to anything. But it does kind of tie me into one other thing I want to mention around this. And this is specifically giving a shout out to Sarah Baldock, a friend of the show. Go check out her previous episodes. So I put a post about this, and I just want to mention something about her comment because it ties in with what we're talking about now and the positive side of the industry. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. So I'm going to read my post out so you can get context for the comment, because the post I put out was, I'm currently working on a new project. There's a lot that needs to be ironed out, and it's certainly more challenging than I first anticipated. But the goal is to bring driving instructors fully on the Vision Zero bandwagon. Vision Zero is the belief that no one should be killed or seriously injured on roads. It's going to be hard work, but it's going to be worth it. Now, I got some really nice comments on that, and I got some nice messages from people, and really supportive, really positive. So I'm taking nothing at all away from those people. But Sarah sent a comment that I couldn't reply to for about 6 hours because I spent about 6 hours thinking about it. And it was simply, how can we help? How can we help? I never see that comment. We get the kind of innocuous comment of, let me know if you need a hand. And I do that all the time, but no one, what a statement. How can we help?
How dare she?
It's just like the best thing I've heard in what feels like years.
Yeah, but isn't that the thing with so many things in life, not just this stuff, where we either don't ask and then we complain that people haven't offered, or we don't take people up on things because we don't believe they meant it, or we don't feel that we can say yes. And actually, that's part of the epic community that we've got. There's people out there that want to, and not everybody wants to be the one person at the top of that pyramid. There's amazing people that just want to say, I want to help. I want to run with it. So tell me which way to run, and I'm off. And Sarah's definitely one of those that when she gets the bit between her teeth, she runs.
Yeah. I couldn't get my head around that comment, that simple comment, how can we help? And it almost shook me a little bit. It's like, what a great question. My answer is still, I don't know. but there's thoughts going on. But yeah, that actually made my day. So we might tie that in a little bit later on, so when we're talking about what we love about our industry. But yeah, let's move on then, because do you know what? I'm going to mention this, and I'm going to sound a bit arsey, but screw it, whatever. The whole week was around raising funds, and the campaign was do 5 things to raise funds. And I didn't raise any money. And I didn't see any instructors raising money, which is part of the reason I'm going back to what I was talking about before, why I want to make this change and why I want to bring this stuff in. Because it is disappointing. For me, I mean, a lot of people won't be disappointed, but for me, it's disappointing that instructors aren't raising money. But it could be because they're not seeing it, as we spoke about before. But one way we did raise some money was for the Big Learner Relay, which was last week. So, I know you're part of that, Chris, Lots of little big learner relays, I think, this time. But just tell us a little bit about that, about the funds that were raised, what you'd noticed, and so on and so forth.
I think it's possibly one of the reasons that instructors weren't necessarily focused on break. It would be interesting with no relay next year, assuming that's not replaced by something from someone, that where the break will get more attention from the industry and things there. But yeah, the big learner relay. I can't explain the mixed emotions. I think. For anyone who's not aware, Louise Walsh started the relay. This was going to be the 10th year, and then sadly in August she died without any warning, very suddenly, and that left us with no relay. So the plan of around the country, all of those stages would never work without her sat in there on the ground making it happen. I've had the pleasure of being on the committee, I'll say for a number of years, because I can't remember how many years I was officially there. Was always in the background, but I know the work that goes into making it happen. So having lost the commander-in-chief, and had lots of instructors around the country wanting to still do something, but the center of all of the relay stuff was family to Louise, Blaine and Amy, and with the support for the whole family, that wasn't going to happen. It was interesting, if that's the right word, to watch what did kind of go on with people doing memorial tributes. I'm just going to say one slight criticism. Some amazingly laid out cars. Where's that been for the last 9 years? Hearts and spelling out Lou, and I've tried getting instructors to park in a pattern in a car park. Shows you what a bit of inspiration gets you. So yes, it was really touching, fascinating to kind of just see how things played out in different places, with people doing different things. And then on Children in Need night, Louise was mentioned, was credited during the show, more than once, about what she'd achieved, and the money that had been raised, and her dedication to the cause. And the BLR was the only non-commercial partner of Children in Need, and I never think it quite got the recognition it should have, if I'm honest. So it did amazing things, and that's all absolutely wonderful. You can't take away from that. But then you look separately at what it's done to the industry, and united and supported people. And there were people having quiz nights, doing little bits of relay, just meeting up with other instructors and doing all of that. And say, whatever people decide to do for charity in the future, and maybe it'll be break, maybe it'll be another charity. There's some really good charities surrounding road safety that do amazing work. Then I hope that on the other side of it, that camaraderie and sense of a united industry that has been bolstered and created by the Big Learner Relay, I hope that is the bit that continues more than anything else. I've met some awesome people. I always apologize, I can never remember their names, I'm rubbish at that, but I've met them and I know them, and most of them have learnt that they just have to mention their name when they start talking to me, because I'm not, that's not my forte. But yeah, I wouldn't have met them otherwise. So there was some great stuff going on. Lots of outpouring of love and support, and over £40,000 raised this year, which that could have been nothing. People might have felt they couldn't. And again, they rallied around and they put things together independently and did some brilliant stuff. And I won a prize off of Phil Cowley's raffle. So I get to spend some time with Stuart Lockery, which is going to be really fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
Unfortunately, someone won the prize of spending time with me, so they got the booby prize. I do want to mention one thing, actually. If you are raising money for a charity, the Big Learner Relay or Children in Need or any of the big charities are not taking money off you. If you are not happy and you see someone else posting, as they've done, with the Big Learner Relay, talking about whether it's donating, you just mentioned the raffle there for Phil. So I've seen comments on his post with people saying, yeah, but I'm promoting this thing and no one's giving me as much, this kind of stuff. It's not in spite of each other, it's as well as, and sometimes you just need to shout louder. So no one is promoting a charity to spite your charity. It's to help each other. It's to raise funds in different areas. And if someone does for lack of a better expression, a better job, then so be it. It doesn't, like I just said, mentioned about Brick, instructors were going to gravitate more towards a Big Learner Relay because it was we made it about driving instructors. Lou made it about driving instructor community. Break has never been made about a driving instructor community. So they're always going to gravitate more towards that. So we can talk about it, we can have the discussion, but I don't know. I get frustrated when I see the complaints around, but my smaller charity is not getting as much because of,
Yeah. I think charities are really difficult. I'm working closely now with a charity for bereaved families, which was founded based on a road fatality, and really close to home, and I mean that in lots of ways. So we've been talking to them about what can we do, how can we try and get engaged, and I think sometimes, especially in the driving instructor world, these charities are the side of it that we see is the negative side of the world. So talking about speed, we tend to talk about the negatives of speed, which is why I tried to ask questions that weren't necessarily just negative but were educational. And I think because of that, Big Learner Relay was very different. It was all positive. So I think sometimes we and charities need to look at ways that we can engage. And the charity that I'm doing some work with, called Josh's Heart of Gold, it would have been Josh's 16th birthday in January, so they're holding a birthday party, and there's this the sadness and the celebration that have to go together for that kind of thing. I think that's one of the reasons that we often struggle. And you have to also remember, social media algorithms don't like one person shouting about something. They like lots of people shouting about something. So sometimes it's just down to that. And maybe we shouldn't rely on social media so much. So instructors should get together and gather in person.
I agree.
Heaven forbid.
Well, I mean, look, for me, it's about pick a charity that works for you. I look at friend of the show, Lee Sperry, think about this, right? Every lesson he does or every session he does, he donates £1 to, I forget the charity's name now, but I think it's something to do with prevention of young suicides. And he's raised an awful lot of money by doing that, but that wouldn't be the first thing that came to my mind. For me, my go-to is the Dogs Trust. And the reason I go to a Dog Trust is because the one thing continuing in life that's made me happy is dogs. Everything else lets me down at some point. But dogs continue to, so I want to look after the dogs. But yeah, let's not get too much into that. I've probably insulted some people already, so let's move on so I can insult someone else, because I want to talk a bit about the NASP webinar. Did you see the NASP webinar, Chris?
No, I didn't. No, it's on my list of to-dos. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
So it was interesting. Let me put it that way. So for those unaware, NASP is it's a National Association Strategic Partnership, and it's a collection of, the ADI&JC, the MSA, and the DIA. Because the DVSA, how many acronyms? Because the DVSA will not talk to all three, they'll only talk to one, so they have to form a little collective, if you like, and they take it in turns to chair that collective once every 3 months rather than once every 4, which would probably make a bit more sense, I think, but either way. And they have opted to do an Ask NASP Anything type of webinar. And I'm going to preface this by saying I'm quite a big fan of Carly Brookfield. I think she's great. I think that she gets shit done. I think that if I need something answering, I could contact her. Someone messaged me, and I forget who, but someone messaged me actually after seeing the webinar and said, she's who I want talking to the DVSA. And I thought, yeah, I get that. I will also say that these webinars only ever seem to come about when Carly Brookfield and the DIA are in charge of NASP for that period. The times when the MSA and ADNJC and that other one are in charge of NASP doesn't seem to happen as much. So, full marks to Carly Brookfield. However, it wasn't a NASP webinar. It was a Carly Brookfield webinar. It was mightily impressive in that sense. I didn't time it, but I would hazard a guess that out of the 60 minutes, Carly spoke for 50, Lynn Barry spoke for 7, and Mike Yeomans spoke for 3, if he was lucky. And it was fascinating. And they got a lot of stick, which I was completely against, because they're giving the I think sometimes people think they're just sitting in their ivory towers doing naught. But it was actually quite an interesting webinar. I would advise watching it, but there was nothing groundbreaking in there. One of the interesting things that I will mention, which probably was a bit more common knowledge than I realized, because I hadn't necessarily picked this detail up, was, and I think it was actually Lynn that said it, talking about the triggers and part of the reasoning behind the DVSA bringing them in. She said that they recently got some stats showing there were a lot of instructors with a pass rate of sub 10%. And that's why it was brought in, because to target them, not to target the people that are hovering about the pass mark, or that have got one driver fault too many, or that had one bad test 1 year, 3 years ago, or anything like that. It's to primarily target that really, really low thing, which I think I knew, but sometimes, you need something spelling out for you. So it was interesting. I'd like to see them do it once a quarter, which I said they were going to do back in 2022, the start of 2022. I'd like to see that, because I think that they could be more approachable. But yeah, I know you didn't see it. Any thoughts on anything I've just said?
Well, I didn't see it, but I did spend the day with Carly at the DIA conference on Friday. And I've known Carly since she took over the DIA. And you're right, it's normally about 90-10 on getting a word in. I've learned to butt in, but she'll say that herself. And as whoever it was said to you, I've said to lots of people, if you want someone fighting your corner against politicians, then I would absolutely, she'd be my choice. And I think the DIA get stick because they're the commercial one of the three, but that comes with benefits. And they'll chase things down and everything else. And I've got a lot of time for all of them. I always say I haven't had enough to do with MSA. It's on my New Year's resolution list. I'm going to do some more stuff to do with them. But I have a lot of time and respect for what they do, and I've had the pleasure of sitting in some of these rooms with DVSA, and I was sat with Loveday on Friday. So I've heard all of the reasonings and the answers, and I kind of understand the machine. It's a bit like banging your head against the wall sometimes. So all credit to them for putting themselves open to questions. It would be nice if we could find as an industry something a bit more constructive, rather than just the day-to-day frustrations. Let's see if we can do something that can actually produce change. And see what's happening there, which is something I've started writing today actually, but we'll save that for another day.
I would agree, as I'm sure you're aware. But no, it's worth watching. You can find it. I'll put links in the show notes, but you can find it on YouTube, I think. And if they said it as a podcast, you'll be able to list on Amazon, YouTube Music. If they haven't said it as a podcast, you won't. You'll have to watch it. But yeah, it's worth a watch. And like I say, full credit to them. And if you're the type of person that's going to go and watch it and then just moan and bitch about everything that's said, go listen to the episode of Phil Cowley's podcast I recorded with him, because tell you what to do there. But either way, let's move on, because you'd mentioned the DIA conference, which I didn't attend, but you did. So tell us a little bit about the DIA conference, how you found that, and like how it compares to ones we've spoken to already, like the Intelligent Instructor one.
I think the nice thing about the DIA conference was that it was I suppose an old school conference. It wasn't an expo type thing, and with the move across in the industry, there haven't been many like that. And I put my hands up, as I said, I haven't engaged with the MSA for a long time, so it might be that they still do, but it was a good, turn up, have some quality speakers. They had Loveday there on her own. Which there's pros and cons to that. It meant that she was straight answering all the questions, but it did mean that she had to defer some of the technical questions to "I'll get back to you." But the speakers were there, and then the afternoon after a decent lunch, and I'm all for that's what you measure things on is what was lunch like. It was a quite decent lunch, and then the afternoon was more of a workshopy. Split everyone into three and then have three different workshops work their way around. And I thought it was really, really good. I enjoyed it. I learned something. I came away feeling fairly positive. I have walked away from these things wanting to quit before. And I always feel with the DIA team that they've all got a sort of slice of that pie, that they're engaged in what they do. They know their bit of the business and they know their stuff about it. So yeah, I'd say that was nice and engaging, and it left things on quite a positive. Except my only negative, someone nicked my goodie bag. I left it on a seat, came back, and it had gone. And there were some lovely stickers from the British Horse Society that I was going to put in our cars. But anyway, I'm sure Alan will send me some more.
My understanding was that Loveday Rider had to sit next to a complete imbecile.
I don't know whether whether we're friends or not. I get glared at every now and again. I tried to be helpful. I asked a question which was nothing to do with it was a genuine concern. It was nothing to do with waiting lists. I could have picked what Terry would class as a dickish comment, and I didn't at all. I actually said I really appreciate the work that they're doing, because as individuals, I think everyone's trying really hard. It's DVSA that are the problem as a machine. And my question was, when are we going to pull our fingers out and sort out the increasing number of automatics, and how we're going to sort out licensing in the future, knowing that it's a DVLA question, but that she should have her finger on that pulse and be engaging with the sister agency. I also know that doesn't happen as much as it should. But I thought it was a good time to flag it up, because that's going to be the biggest commitment that an instructor makes for the next 4 to 6 years, is going to be, what car am I going to have? And I think that just adds to the stress and concern of an uncertain future. Unfortunately, it wasn't particularly engaged with as a question, and we went back to waiting lists again. So I tried.
Fair enough. What I would say is, I noticed that you put a post up asking what people's thoughts on the DIA were, and there were some interesting comments on that, including someone who said, the DIA conference, including someone who said they'd rather stick pins in their eyes, which I found really interesting, because I didn't think that was the choice. I think that you could choose to go or not. I didn't realise it was stick pins in your eyes or attend. And I wonder if he did. Because he's literally saying, because I haven't gone to this conference, I'm going to stick pins in my eyes. I wonder if he actually did, and if he did it before or after he typed the comment. Either way, let's move on, because we're talking about the positive side of the industry today, clearly. Right, so let's take a moment to set the table. Chris, do you want to remind everyone who you are, what you do, and where you come from?
I am Chris Bensted, and I am a driving instructor without a car. I specialise in theory training, as Theory Test explained. I'm also an audit trainer, so I do all that stuff working with PDIs and ADIs. Plus, I am co-founder of the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective, the DITC, theditc.co.uk, which is a signposting platform for the industry, where you can find the stuff you didn't know you needed and the stuff that you think you need but you can't find. So get in touch and we can point you in a direction. We aim to have fingers in as many pies as possible to be able to point you in the direction of the people that can help if we can't help ourselves.
And this is the Instructor Podcast Green Room Edition. This is a monthly show. We cover all the latest news and topics, but we are currently midway through season 6, literally at the halfway point. We've just released the 5th episode. Some awesome topics so far, including the last one on why teenagers scare the living shit out of me. Brilliant episode. Loved that. And we've got some awesome stuff to come. But if you want more, check out the Instructor Podcast Premium, where for as little as £10 a month, you can get instant access to well over 100 trainings and audio podcasts and video podcasts and written content, all this kind of cool stuff, and something that my premium members regularly refer to as the best value CPD on the market. The best place to find that, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. But I'm going to turn our attention back to the question that I asked the Instructor Podcast Facebook group recently, which is, what do you love about our industry? So I think the best way to tackle this, Chris, is for me to read through some of the comments we've got, and we'll just reflect on those comments.
Cool. Sounds good.
So first up was Phil Cowley, and Phil has done a list of 10 things that he loves about our industry. Number 1, the community. Number 2, friends I've made. 3, the BLR. 4, the awesome people out there trying to improve driving lessons and road safety. Number 5, the amount of time people are willing to give up for free. Number 6, the amount of options there is. The amount of options there is out there for self-development. Number 7, the expos. Number 8, how supportive everyone is of each other. Number 9, associations. And number 10, we get to change people's lives. Anything in there stand out for you as resonating or surprising?
Well, seeing as we weren't personally name checked, I think we should both move on. But if we're going to stick with that list, no, I can't disagree with any of that. I think everything on that list was about people. I don't think there was an exception. That it's about the people's willingness to engage, and that comes from passion, and it comes from people actually giving a shit, and that for me is something that sometimes comes out from the funniest places. When things go horribly wrong, you see everyone step up. I absolutely agree.
You said you didn't get a mention, but surely you and the DITC would fall under the associations.
Well, depending on who you speak to, yes. And at one point we were asked to be part of NASP. I declined. It was addressed by the DVSA that maybe that's the way forwards. It wasn't.
Well, then it would make sense for the chair to be every 3 months.
Maybe they need me. Maybe they.
That's the reason. It was nothing to do with the quality you're doing. It's just to make the monthly thing more relevant. But I think the one that stands out for me personally there is actually the one he said about the amount of time people are willing to give up for free. Because I see that, I look at what we're doing today and the time you're giving up to come on here and share your wisdom with everyone listening and potentially watching. But yeah, I think that's really, really relevant. And we hear a lot from people about how instructors shouldn't be charging other instructors. Now everything should be for free and all this nice word nonsense. But people do give up so much of their time for free. They really, really do. I can't get my head round, still to this day, the amount of time people give up free. I've recently recorded with Josh Holleran of Mirror Signal Podcast, and his episode's going to be out soon. And it was something he was saying as well. the amount of time people are just going to give up. And yes, we will see comments in response to that of, well, hope you enjoy the free promotion. Like, well, it's free in the sense of it's not costing anything, but it's also you giving up your time to come on here and put up with me for an hour or an hour and a half. So I like that one. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I also think, we say about free promotion. The alternative is we pay for it, and then people get spammed with lots of adverts or all of these things. That surely, as a community, supporting each other, it's a bit like buy from local businesses, isn't it? It's that thing of not going to the big supermarket all the time and trying to find a local company to support. I don't see it as being any different from that. We give each other that bit of space and time, and we shout about how great the industry is. It's clearly a bad thing.
I had a brilliant one this week. I'd not put out an Instructor podcast email for a little while. I've just time with everything else, but I'm trying to get back into that habit. And it seemed perfect because we slap bang in the middle of season 5. So I thought, great, I can reflect on the first half, look at what's coming up, and then I'll mention some of the premium stuff as well. So kind of a wrap-up email, if you like. 4 people unsubscribed within 30 minutes of me sending it out. And I thought, what do you expect to receive from the Instructor podcast email? It's going to be about the Instructor podcast. But either way, let's move on because I'm going to come on to Melissa Judd. Now, Melissa's quite a long message, so I'll read the first bit and condense or paraphrase the second bit slightly. Said, I'm only 7 months on a pink, but so far a few things I have loved is watching a pupil reflect and tell me how they will do it differently. It works and they learn from their mistake and they are well proud of themselves for it. I also sit there smiling and just as Bob says, get the learning out instead of putting it in. The first thing I'll say there is when we say Bob, everyone knows who we mean. We don't need to add the surname, which is great. But she also gave the example of a student who had failed a few years ago with someone else, and they've come to her and they're passed. But I like the end of this she's put on, which is at a test on Monday in a different area in his own car. And he said, Mel, you always said a road's a road, and I should be able to drive anywhere using the same skills. And he passed with 2 faults, and she loves that he's passed in this different area. And I think that's a really nice thing as well. So, yeah, your thoughts on that one, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see them as exceptions, but actually they're the things that define what we do when people are successful like that. And someone at the DIA conference actually stood up saying that the thing that he loves is when you have that breakthrough moment. So it's a real shame that you have to trudge through the other stuff to get to it, and we remember the other stuff more. But you have to kind of cling on to those lovely good things. But all credit to, was it Mel?
Yeah.
Yes, all credit to Mel for being new to things and have figured that out. And just all I would say is hang on to it, because so often people can draw you in a different direction and tell you what you should be thinking. Yeah. We're all guilty of having fallen foul of that. So yeah, cling on to that. Get a diary, write these things down, because they'll be lovely to look back on when you feel like you've been beaten into submission.
The thing I like about this one is she's put, it works. She's put, it's watching how pupils reflect and tell me how they will do it differently. It works. And I'm like, I love that, because what she's done, and I know from speaking to her that this is the case, she's had all this negative outside influence telling her not to do it this way, to do the old school instructing method. But she's persevered. And through that perseverance, she's now seeing it's worked because she's got good at what she's doing. Yeah. And I just think what a lovely testament. And so big shout out to Mel. If anyone wants to use the comments to tell us any of their things, what they love about the industry, feel free. But I will invite you guys later on to, if you want to share any thoughts as well. But feel free to use the comments now and I'll read them out. We've also got a comment from Nicola Krebin, who once drove past me in Harrogate. And I was standing at the side of the road. I wasn't in the car. So there you go. That's how I know Nicola. And if I'm wrong, then that's going to be embarrassing when it goes out. Obviously, students overcoming challenges and passing tests. how much non-judgmental help, support, and advice you get from other driving instructors, and then in brackets, so long as you join the right Facebook groups, because some people would rather stick pins in their eyes and give help. Sharing of experiences, feeling like part of a community, the little waves, nods, and smiles you'll give and receive when passing other instructors in what could feel like a very lonely job.
Yes. Yeah, I can empathise with all of that. And, you know, I think that's your day to day, isn't it? Do you know, it's one of the things that I miss the most is I'm in a undercover car nowadays and I don't get waved at. And I've just changed my car because my other car started to be spotted a bit, not spotted in a BLR way. I mean, people started recognising it because it was a big red estate and it was nicknamed the fire engine. So I've now changed it for another car. I'm not telling you what it is because I'm enjoying being incognito. Except I waved out a window at an instructor the other day, and it was this morning. His head nearly pivoted off when he realised it was me, and he hadn't waved. So yeah, there's something lovely about instructor waving. It's a real thing. It's almost like a secret handshake, but we can't quite reach each other.
I'm in an interesting place at the moment because I started taking my top box off in between lessons because it felt like a break. It felt like I was taking a break. When I knew I had the top box on, I was still working.
Yeah.
So I took the top box off and I was waving at other instructors and wondering why they were giving me quizzical looks back because I'm just some random bloke waving at them. Then I realised, this is where I am now, I've realised that the top box is off. So now I never wave at instructors because I forget that it's on during lessons. So I see instructors waving. I'm like, why are they waving? Oh, yes, okay, this is what we do. By that time, they've gone. So I'm at an interesting point now. but yes, I like those thoughts as well by Nicola. I'm going to move on to Fiona McMeekin, who says, number 1, loving all the free CPD and making new friends with like-minded ideas. Number 2, watching a pupil develop to where they actually see they can achieve their dream of independence when others have told them no. Number 3, helping to achieve a license after illness or disability when a license has been revoked. And number 4, helping new friends by passing on information to help them better understand neurodiversity to aid teaching. Love what I do. It's not work. There you go. That's lovely, isn't it? Just before I ask for your thoughts on that, I'm going to mention one thing because what's interesting there is I think that's the second person that's mentioned like free CPD, which is right because there's so much available. In theory, you don't need to pay anyone ever in our industry. Everything you could possibly need is available on like articles and blogs and podcasts and YouTube and all this kind of stuff. However, both the people that said it pay for my premium membership. So both of these people are talking about the free CPD, but they're also willing to invest in themselves, which I find quite interesting.
And that's what I always think about free CPD is it's a real opportunity to find out where you're going to go. So you're right, you don't have to pay. There's so much out there, and you can harvest it all up. But what you find is it gives you that inspiration and that determination to then go and achieve something, and that's the bit I think that I engage with the most. That's why I'm always happy to have a chat with someone who's not sure, because it comes back in other ways. It's great. Fiona's one of those. We had a 10-minute phone call the other day that lasted 2 hours. My other half kept looking out the window to see what was going on. She's always willing to share and exchange views and ideas. So she's equally giving of what she takes, as you say.
The number 3 she wrote on it was not one I would have considered because it's not happened to me before, but helping to achieve a license after illness or disability when a license has been revoked. I like that. That's something I've not considered before. So any other thoughts on that one, Chris?
I know she's an absolute mine of information about disability work, deaf learners, particularly the deaf community. She's very engaged, and having done a little bit of work on on the physical disability side and doing a lot of work on neuro, diversities. It is such a rewarding area. I think a lot of people are scared of it, that it's the bit they don't know. If you enjoy everyday learners and you enjoy that, what that gives back, the specialisms are so much more, because it genuinely means more, especially when they find hard to access. All power to Fiona for what she does, because she fights the good fight.
Yeah. I keep asking her to come on the podcast, and every time she does, she pulls this very interesting face, which is like, nope. But she's coming on. I'm going to make one. So a couple of comments I want to touch back on. Garrett Millen says, I have to stop myself waving at the instructor's cars when I'm a passenger in my partner's car. And then Kevin Ray. Having been a school teacher prior to becoming a driving instructor, I love the variety and range of learners I come across. 17 to 68-year-olds so far, love it. I think the oldest I've taught so far was 60. What's your oldest, Chris?
74, I believe he was. I think he was in his 70s. He was Russian, and has a very fond place in my heart, and sadly didn't survive COVID, and he didn't get to passing his test. But we had a hell of a journey. And he used to call me the professor. His English was very, very poor. That's all I can say. Just imagine a big Russian. Yes, lovely guy. And he didn't find it easy, and we found a way to communicate and get on very well. And we'll remember him for a long, long time. So yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on. I mentioned her before, but Sarah Baldock, and I found her answer to this fascinating again. She's throwing in some awesome content recently. Also, check out Sarah Baldock's Instagram. She's doing some great stuff over there. If you're looking to recommend someone to your students, recommend Sarah Baldock. Why have I found this question so tricky to answer? What a great way to answer a question. What I love about the job, I could talk for hours and regularly do about that. Massive job satisfaction, the amazing interaction with students, etc. What I love about the industry, when I think about it, I'm not sure what the industry you're actually referring to actually is. Is that an odd thing to say? For me, it's all wrapped up in and stems from the Instructor podcast. All of my knowledge about the industry comes from here. Without it and the amazing people involved who give their time, I wouldn't have a fraction of the information and knowledge that I do. I wouldn't have met so many great people. I wouldn't have been to any expos. I doubt, and I definitely wouldn't have done as much CPD. So for me, the industry is a friendly, open, and encouraging community of like-minded people, all willing to learn and share stuff. It's brilliant to be a part of, and I'm thankful that I am.
It's just sickening. I had a lovely meeting with Sarah the other day, because she's local to me. I'm really lucky. Have some great instructors around here, and she's one of them. And we're talking to one of her ex-pupils who passed, just to clarify, who might be becoming a driving instructor. So we might be doing training with her. And she hasn't had her license for 3 years yet. So we're counting down the days. So yes, yeah, no, she's awesome, and she gets it. And as you say, someone to engage with. Absolutely.
I fully appreciate the compliments you paid there to the Instructor podcast, but I think we can swap that out for a number of things, whether we swap that out for the kit or the DITC or whatever, but there will be different organizations or whatever you want to call them that have had that same impact on different instructors. And I think that's really, really impressive and really good for our industry. Obviously, it's nice that she's mentioned the podcast, but I do think it's great that someone has latched on. And again, go back to this is what this show was all about. That response there sums up exactly what I wanted from this show when I started way back on episode 1, and I believe this is episode 160. So for someone to go and articulate it like that, it's like that's amazing for me. We talk about the positive side from this. That is the most positive thing anyone could say about what we're doing here.
I remember getting a message from some bloke who wanted to do a podcast. Would I be interested in being involved and stuff? And I was like, who's this? And I get to go out and do lots of bits and talk to people, and I'm a gob on a stick, and that's fine. I quite enjoy it. I get far more pleasure in seeing the amazing things you've done with the podcast. And I say, when I was at the conference on Friday, everybody I spoke to, they said, where do I find more about you, or where do I find something about this Instructor podcast every time? Because I know they're not just going to find that one thing they're looking for. They're going to find all of the other things. And that one thing they're looking for might not be the hook for that individual. It might not catch them. But I know there'll be something amongst the other things that will be. There's not many places that you can get that in such a nice, consumable way. So I love the fact, my thing is, and it's not just you. There's lots of people out there that I can sort of sit back and go, I remember when you started out. I remember when you didn't have a bloody clue, and you were just kind of thrashing around seeing what would happen, and now seasoned professional, expert in a field, expert out of a field, but it's those things, that's lovely, because the thing that I've always said about me, my frustration is I get people that will get in touch and ask a question because I knew you'd have the answer. Just a driving instructor, and I've just kept my ears open, and I've been lucky in places to get into rooms and sit next to Loveday at conference or whatever it is. Don't know if that was lucky, but those opportunities were there. But everybody can find their own opportunities, and the more that we as a community of people putting things out there are around, the easier it gets. Back in the day when I started the first Facebook group, you didn't get instructors gathering and didn't have those things. I'm talking to some PDIs now where it's just normal for them. They don't realize how you had to try and really fight to find good. Now good's on your doorstep. In those little bits that are out there that mean you can dabble and you can find out what you like, and you can steal bits, and that is, it's a very different world, and I love that. And having been a little part of it by chance as much as anything is really nice, and just being able to sit back and see where stuff goes, have a conversation and see what comes of it.
I mean, you mentioned at one point during there about me thrashing my arms about not knowing what we're doing. I'm still there because it's still trying to do something new all the time. So I'm constantly thrashing my arms about trying not to drown. But no, I appreciate, I'm going to say some of the things you've said there. I appreciate all the things you've said there, but specifically referring to some of the things you've said. I want to touch into the comments again on the chat because Guy McMillan said, I did a few lessons for a recently widowed lady in the early 70s who had only been driving to local shops. We did motorway lessons so she could go see her sister and children. He'd forgotten about this. Maybe he should keep that wind diary Chris mentioned. I'm going to advise against keeping a wind diary and instead keep a Winventory. That was Adila Mars's name, Winventory, which I've since become a massive fan of. I should claim that as my own now, because most people that hear me say it won't have heard it before. But yes, a Winventory. All right, let's move on then. So the last comment that was put up in the group was, in fact, you know what? Slight preface to this, because I've got something called Gilbert syndrome, which is clearly a very traumatic disease that is debilitating and hampers me in everywhere. And I should get lots of sympathy from everyone. That's why it's that well known. Exactly. However, one of the things that triggers this, that can cause me to have issues with this, is certain types of food and drink. And one of the types of drink that can cause me to have what I call Gilbert syndrome moments is alcohol. And I recently lost 3 days after having 3 pints. And I 100% blame Les Hopkinson for this, because I met him at the Intelligent Instructor Expo. We shared 3 pints. Well, we didn't share the pints. We had 3 pints together, and I lost 3 days because of Les. So I'm blaming him.
Sorry, this is like something out of Hangover. I think there's a podcast episode that is probably lost somewhere out there that you could have recorded and not known anything about.
Well, what I will say is that Les took a picture when he left me that evening, and then someone else took a picture the next day at the expo. There are no pictures of what happened in between, and there will never be pictures of what happened in between.
But there is a tiger.
There's tiger pants. There's tiger pants. That's all I will say. When I hit my target of getting to the weight I'm working towards, I will share my tiger pants.
No.
Anyway.
We get a choice.
No, we're going to be a green room special. Anyway, so Les Hopkinson has listed 10 things which he loves about our industry. Number 1, I love seeing people go from being anxious about driving and helping them to grow into safe, confident drivers. Number 2, the look of joy when a pupil passes their driving test. Number 3, the freedom to make the job and your business the way you want it. Number 4, interacting with people who care about the development. Number 5, the awesome people delivering free content and CPD. Going back to what I mentioned before, free CPD, someone suggest being happy they've got that, but also willing to pay. 6, being able to meet people from across the industry at expos and make them lose 3 days. 7, how top trainers are willing to give up their free time to help other ADIs. Number 8, the Instructor podcast. Number 9, the look on a pupil's face when they overcome a challenge and realize they can actually do it. And number 10, getting up every day and loving my job. There you go, Chris. Thoughts on that?
It's so lovely that there's not any selfishness in any of these comments, is there?
No.
It's so many of them about giving to other people, and it's just enjoying that, seeing that success or seeing that change, whatever it might be. And then the others are about growing yourself. It's a growth mindset. It's not about taking. It's all about growth. There's no negativity in any of those things. So, yeah, I awesome. Thanks, Les.
What I like particularly about all these comments, I think it's showing a certain class of person, because I go back earlier on and I mentioned you asked about the DIA conference, and some of the comments in there were just generally a bit wanky, and I'd rather stick pins in my eyes. Great. What an articulate comment. That's really well thought out. I enjoyed reading that. Thank you. Now go and look at what people have said here. And I think there's a big old difference there. That you've actually got some really well thought out answers here that appear honest. I just really like the thought. I like the fact that there's been a general theme to all of them, but they've all been articulated very differently as well. So I'm really impressed with this.
Yeah, and absolutely. I also love the fact that they hated something they didn't go to.
Yes. Yes.
Clearly informed.
Yes. And we saw that recently. What was it? I think it was a blog from the DVSA when everyone was complaining about it in the comments and no one had read it. I'm like, I get it, but maybe there's a way to complain about something you haven't read, or a way to complain about a conference you haven't been to. And to be fair, that does say a lot, because they're not doing a good enough job to get those people in. When I say you can only complain about the podcast if you listened, there's truth to that, but I haven't done enough to make you listen. So that's feedback for me as well.
The biggest one for the conferences seems to be they're never far enough north or south. The DIA one was literally at the heart of England. That's where it was. You've got to be fair to everybody. So unless you do a roving, type thing and go to everyone, sometimes, as everybody today I think has proven, you've got to invest to grow yourself. And whether that be, and I always appreciate it as much as I do, nearly as much as I do financially. I always appreciate people's efforts of taking the time to listen. And I don't ever expect they should. I think that there's just something important in saying, right, what can I do to make me better this week, this day, this year, whatever it might be. Let's see how we can. If I go through a day without learning something, I feel that I've missed out.
I really don't want to be flippant here, because I'm feeling the cost of living crisis. I really am. But I'm going to use the Intelligent Instructor as an example. We know when their next expo is. I don't know if they've actually announced a specific date, but we know it's in October, early October they go for. So we could start saving for that now. You know, and again, that's what I mean about being flippant. I appreciate that to some people, including myself at the minute, every pound counts. So I get that it doesn't apply to everyone, but there's a lot of people out there that maybe do struggle a bit financially, but could go, do you know what? I want to attend that. If I save £2 a week, I'm going to have enough to take a day off and pay for some fuel to go down that day. But we don't, or a lot of people don't. We kind of wait until we're a month away and they start advertising a bit more prominently and go, oh, I can't make it. And you know, it's one of the things I'm working on at the minute is an events calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that might help as well, because what we see is the DIA will obviously promote their event, and Intelligent Instructor will promote their event, and then MSA will put all these events promoted by different people. It'll be good if you could just go onto a calendar and scroll through and see all the, what I'm going to refer to as national events. I'm using the word working on loosely. By working on, I mean thought about.
I was just, I was literally about to say, right, I'm going to cross that off my list of to-dos, because I haven't yet found a decent system to kind of put it out there, and you can have it, but then, you know, there's all of that stuff. So if you want to collab on that one, I'm up for it. But yeah, I've always said that's one of the problems is we don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I think if you could look at a calendar for next year, 2024, and go, right, I would like to attend these things. What do I have to do to make that happen? That could be really helpful. So again, I'm not meaning to belittle or trivialize anything that people might have financially, but I think there's a better way to do it. And if you went to the expo last year or the DIA conference this month and gone, I want to go again, well, you've got a year to save up, or a year to plan for that. You know, I think I've said before that I start planning my December diary in January. You know, I'm sorted for December, always sorted for December. But that came from a December that was really, really bad. And I learned from that. I went, that's not happening again. I need to make sure I'm fixed there. So what do we love about the industry, Chris? Like I said, there's some really good stuff there. Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything in particular you love about our industry, or anything around the peripherals or anything like that?
I think the danger is industry suggests the structure in which we work. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, I hate that, because it's rigid, it's not progressive, it's the opposite of probably all the things that I love and value about the industry. And therefore it's it's a real challenge. And, you know, this is where my mindset of DVSA minimum standards is here. Let's leave them to it and grow upwards. And, you know, so I think community is probably where my positive focus is, rather than industry itself, because I think sometimes when we think about that, there's a real, you know, especially at the moment, you know, there's a real challenge that comes from it. So finding those things to embrace community-wise, it is that when needed, people step up, and they always have. Just little things. When I say little things, sorry, I'm just questioning that statement. Little things like when my now eldest son was born, just a tiny thing. The number of instructors that I didn't know that reached out to me and said, you know, what do you need? How can we help? You know, if there's a test or something, because obviously it's not that planned, then we can get involved and help out. And 13 years later, you know, they're still really good friends who I see. Well, it's been once a year, generally speaking. And I hope that something will fill that void of community, whether it's that people start going to conferences a bit more or something else, but the opportunities to meet up, because that was a BLR thing, was meeting these people that were, you know, keen to engage. And, you know, it is those people, their passion, being able to be there when they're struggling, and then for them to be there when I am, and that, for someone who doesn't like people, that's probably what I value most about our community. The industry frustrates me, but I think it's not as bad as we make it out to be sometimes. I think we make a pretty good run at things. It would just be nice if it was slightly more mobile, if that's not an ironic statement.
Yeah, I agree. I think largely what you've said. I think for me, it's the people, it's the community, it's the fact that there's so many people that expect nothing but are willing to give everything. And I think that the people I mourn about are the opposite to that. They're the people that expect everything but aren't willing to do anything for it. But more and more I'm finding, and this isn't intentional on my part, it's just natural gravity, unless you're a flat earther, in which case no offense intended. People gravitate towards like-minded people. So there are loads of people that I'm friends or friendly with, who I know I could say, will you help me with this? Whether I do or not, it's a different matter.
Yeah.
But it's like I kind of joked before about the person that won the coaching session with me. They're surprised at how helpful I'm being at arranging that coaching session. I'm thinking, of course I am, but they don't expect it. Like when I'm arranging people to come on the podcast, I'm still often surprised when people say, yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I would say, yeah. And I think that we spoke before, and I think I said it on the podcast before, about there have been people that have been a certain way when I've spoken. So when I thought, yeah, no, you're not coming on. Our values don't align. And that's not me necessarily saying they're wrong. We just have different values. My values could be wrong. I'm not saying they're right, but I think that's the thing. You just meet such really giving people. And the problem, and I know this is the positive side, but the problem is that the negative people always shout louder. They get noticed more. That's what attracts attention. I can't remember. We've all seen the survey results about how negative comments go a lot higher in reach than positive ones, and it draws less attention. And I'm expecting this episode that I will label, I'll probably label the positive side of the industry or something like that, will get less downloads because we're talking about nice things, not sitting here moaning about the DVSA. But I care less about that now. I care a lot less than I used to. I care more about the people that I surround myself with, and the people that I'm privileged that use me as part of their surround. I've said this before, and I say it a lot. I love my students as well. I really do. I think someone said it in the comments earlier. You get what you pay for, Guy McMillan. And you get what you give out. The number of people you see online complaining about their students, very, very rare do I complain about my students. You get what you give out. If you give out those positive vibes and you go on to social media, for example, and you're talking about road safety and talking about anxiety and talking about coaching and the way you work and all this kind of stuff, you're more likely to get people interested in that than if you go on and just put up past pictures, because then you're only going to get people interested in passing. And it's not a finite science, but it's that. And I just think there's so much good stuff that goes unnoticed. And that's what I wanted to do today. I wanted to talk about this stuff because I'm just sick of seeing all the crap all the time. And I've said before, there's nothing wrong with a good moan now and again. Everyone has a right to a moan. Everyone has a right to complain. But there comes a line where that complaining has to stop and either deal with it or take action. And I won't go into that too much because if anyone wants to hear me talk more about that, go check out my episode on Phil Callie's podcast. There were several rants on there. So we've got another comment from one of my lovely premium subscribers, Guy McMillan, who says a law of attraction and a secret from Rhonda Byrne, I'm guessing, based on you get what you focus on. It's not magic. Your brain actively looks for examples of what you're focused on, i.e. learners suddenly see learner cars everywhere. and people expect tests to be hard when they are. Yep, agree with that. I've got serious reservations about the Secret and those types of books, but the way you've explained it there, Guy, makes total sense. Any final thoughts or anything you want to touch on, Chris, before we wrap up today?
No, I think, actually what Guy said, kind of, if you look for positive people, you'll find them. So that's kind of what we've said today is there's lots of positives out there. Sadly, too often the negative is the thing that we remember, and everyone will remember the rant from Terry and not the positive rant. Or they remember me criticizing the DVSA instead of saying that actually they're doing a really good job as individuals working for a dinosaur of a machine. So I think that there's some great stuff out there. If you're having a bad day, try and look for it. Find your favorite podcast episode. Make sure that you bookmark it so that you can go and revisit it. Or do what I did, which is find a zombie apocalypse series that's written by a driving instructor that I was, to be honest, listening to because he's a friend of mine, and I felt I should have. And I'm now 8 books in.
You've completely thrown me now thinking about zombie apocalypse. There's only one rant that I regret. Only one rant that I regret, and that was the 4 Ps rant. Do you remember the 4 Ps rant?
Yes, yes, I do. I was about to say no, but yes, I do remember.
I forget what episode that was from, but every now and again I wake up in cold sweats about that. I think I should go edit that. Can't believe I put that out. But either way, I would advise what Chris said there. If you can copy the links for the podcast and put them into a notes app on your phone, you've always got them there then to revert back to. But thank you for your time today, Chris. Do you want to take a moment to remind everybody where they can find you?
So you can find me on Theory Test Explained. Facebook is the best place for that, but there is a website that I am trying to work on, or on theditc.co.uk for all of your instructor needs. So if you want some help with your pupils' theory stuff or yours, or if you want to try and discover something that you didn't know you needed, get in touch and we'll try and help.
98% of listeners switch off when I say, do you want to remind everyone where you are, Chris? Because no one cares about the last bit. So if you are listening to the last bit of the podcast, you are my favourite people in the entire world. You are the special listeners. And I've said this pretty much in every episode so far. You are the special listeners, and you get your virtual high five. So thank you for listening, and go and check out the Instructor Podcast Premium, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. And stay safe and drive safe. That's my 5-minute theory one again. See, if you don't listen all the way to the end, you're missing all this high quality stuff. What do I say, Chris, at the end of this? What do I say normally?
But I don't listen to the end, and I'm here.
Yeah, I know. What's my catch line for the show? How do I finish this show? Someone help me. Let's just keep raising standards. Fucking raise them then, did I?
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook. Talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.